On April 18, 1906, at 5:12 in the morning, San Francisco broke, and when it did, it accidentally invented the insurance industry as we know it. Everyone knows the story: massive earthquake, fires burned for days, the city got rebuilt bigger and better. Classic American resilience. But that's not what actually happened. What really happened was far stranger, and it started with a problem nobody had solved before. How do you insure a disaster you can't predict? Before 1906, insurance worked like your car payment. You paid every month, and if nothing happened, the company kept the money and everyone moved on. But earthquakes were different. They were rare, massive, and unpredictable. No insurance company had ever had to pay out for something like this. So when the ground started shaking on that April morning, insurance companies faced a choice: pay up or go bankrupt. The earthquake itself, magnitude 7.9, though they didn't measure it that way back then, ruptured the ground for almost 300 miles. It lasted about 45 seconds. But here's the thing: the earthquake didn't destroy San Francisco. The fires did. The broken gas lines and wood frame buildings burning for 3 days afterward. That's what leveled the city. And that distinction mattered enormously for who paid what. Insurance policies at the time had a clause. They covered fire damage but not earthquake damage. Most companies figured they were safe. Earthquakes were acts of God, unpredictable, uninsurable, not their problem. Except the earthquake asterisk caused asterisk the fires. So was that covered or not? The lawsuits started immediately. Insurance companies had to make a decision that would echo through the next century. They could fight every single claim and try to avoid bankruptcy, or they could pay. Most of them chose to pay. Why? Because if they didn't, nobody would buy earthquake insurance ever again. They'd destroy their own business model. This sounds like a simple business decision. It wasn't. Insurance companies paid out about $235 million in 1906 dollars, roughly $8 billion today. Some companies went under completely. Others nearly did, but by paying, they learned something crucial. Catastrophic risk could be measured, priced, and managed. You just needed enough data. And that's where urban planning comes in. Because once insurance companies understood catastrophic risk, they started caring very much about building codes. If your building burned down in an earthquake, that was their problem now. So they started asking, what if buildings were designed to survive better? What if streets were wider so fires couldn't jump from block to block? Before 1906, cities grew like weeds: cheap land, close together, minimal rules. San Francisco was the same. Wooden buildings packed tight, narrow streets, gas lines running underneath. When the fire started, there was almost nothing stopping it. The fire chief didn't even have enough water pressure to fight it effectively. After the disaster, San Francisco rebuilt with stricter standards: brick and steel instead of wood in the downtown core, wider streets, better water systems, fire breaks between neighborhoods. These weren't just aesthetic choices, they were driven by insurance companies calculating risk. Safer buildings meant lower payouts. But here's where it gets interesting. Insurance companies didn't just influence San Francisco, they became the hidden architects of American cities. Building codes, zoning laws, fire breaks, earthquake-resistant design, these spread because insurance made them profitable. A safer building cost more upfront but saved money on insurance premiums. Think of it like this: imagine your landlord didn't care if your apartment was safe. Now imagine your landlord's insurance company does care, because if something goes wrong, they're paying. Suddenly safety matters a lot. The incentive structure changes everything. This pattern repeated in other cities. Chicago had already burned in 1871, which is why it rebuilt with stone and brick. But the 1906 earthquake made catastrophic risk a national conversation. Insurance companies started hiring engineers to assess risk in cities nationwide. Urban planning became a technical discipline, not just a real estate game. The real story, then, isn't that San Francisco rebuilt better because people learned a lesson. It's that San Francisco rebuilt better because the people paying for it, insurance companies, had a financial reason to demand better building standards. Morality didn't drive the change. Economics did. And once you understand that, you start seeing it everywhere. Why do flood-prone areas have stricter building codes now? Insurance. Why do hurricane-resistant roofs matter in Florida? Insurance. Why do earthquake-resistant standards exist in California? The 1906 earthquake taught insurers that catastrophe was measurable, predictable, and preventable if you were willing to pay for prevention upfront. This created a feedback loop. Better building codes meant fewer catastrophic losses. Fewer losses meant insurance companies could charge lower premiums. Lower premiums made development in safer areas more affordable. Cities grew smarter because the financial incentives aligned with safety. It wasn't altruism, it was math. The 1906 earthquake killed around 3,000 people directly, with thousands more from disease and displacement. The economic loss was staggering. But from that tragedy came something that shaped every American city built after: the idea that disaster could be insured, measured, and prevented through better planning and design. Today, when you buy a house or rent an apartment, the building codes protecting you exist because of decisions made after 1906. The zoning laws that separate residential from industrial areas, the firebreaks between neighborhoods, the structural standards, they're all downstream from that moment when insurance companies realized they had to care about how cities were built. So the next time you notice a city is well planned, or a building seems over-engineered for earthquakes or floods, remember, it's probably there because an insurance company did the math and decided that prevention was cheaper than paying for disaster. Economics built your city long before anyone called it resilience. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. Subscribe so you don't miss the hidden economic forces reshaping how we live. They're usually invisible until you know where to look. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.